Why do some cultures seem to hold back evil while other cultures seem to actually enable evil? We'll talk about it today on the 2-Minute Warning. I once had an academic tell me that you can't really call one culture morally better than another. I disagreed, and I borrowed this line from Ravi Zacharias, who once said that cultures that love their neighbors are always better than cultures that eat their neighbors. Cultures are not morally equal. There's no way to make that argument. In fact, I was reminded of this when I interviewed recently Nick Kristof about his new documentary series, Half the Sky, in which he looks at the human rights abuses that are directed at women around the world. In countries like Sierra Leone and in Cambodia, women are victimized. And you say, well, wait a minute, women are victimized in America as well. We have rape and trafficking here too. It's true, but in Sierra Leone, where one center, for example, had 100,000 victims of rape come through their doors, there was only one prosecution. And so, while some countries handle evil and put perpetrators of evil behind bars, others don't have the cultural resources to do so. Now, this isn't a Western versus a non-Western issue either. In fact, I would suggest that Western culture is getting worse at curtailing evil. This point was made by Theodore Dalrymple, the British satirical writer, after watching the riots that started in London a few years ago spread throughout the rest of the country. He said that British culture used to be able to prevent the spread of such kind of craziness, but it didn't have that sort of ability anymore. I look at American culture and I see the same thing. When we talk about respect for others, the ability to get along, the ability to disagree without anger and without hate, the ability to delay gratification, our culture is losing the ability to help its citizens curtail evil. So now our question is, what resources do these certain cultures have that help catechize its citizens towards a more moral way of life? And how do we help rebuild those resources in our culture? Well, two answers are typically given. Many on the left want to just say, well, government is the answer to that problem. Many on the right want to say, no, it's the individual. But the problem is, if you just go with government, the bigger government becomes, the more restricted the individual's freedom are, and they're not really being moral, they're just being obedient. On the flip side of that, if you just give citizens unlimited freedom who don't have the character to handle that freedom, you don't get more morality and a better cultural way of life either. There's a third way, and that's the way that I want to actually encourage us to think about in this new year. When Alexis de Tocqueville came over to America and observed the American experiment, he noted that there was something unique about the American experiment that wasn't present in any of the European societies, even the democratic ones. And that was that between the individual and the government, there was layer upon layer of what he called intermediate institutions. Families, churches, social groups, civic organizations, local governments. In other words, there was all kinds of community resources that would help the citizen become catechized into the way of life that the culture expected. Edmund Burke talked about this. He referred to it as the little platoons. Now, why is this important for us? Well, because many of us have looked at maybe the last year with great despair. The people that are at the top of the culture when it comes to politics or entertainment or news media aren't the people that we want there. And we want to go into despair. Listen, despair, as Chuck Colson would say, is a sin. There's always something to do right outside of our door. Culture doesn't just change from the top down, and that's good news for some of us that don't have access to the top. We all have access to the culture that's right outside of our door. Our own churches, our own neighborhoods, our own cities, our own school boards, our own civic organizations, our own neighborhoods. So jump in, get involved. As always at the Colson Center, we've prepared a whole list of ways that you can get involved and resources on what to do once you get involved. Just visit us at the website. For the 2-Minute Warning, I'm John Stonestreet.